Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending this session, and thank you to our speaker, Sarah Library.
Oh, yeah.
Accept this gift. And for the interest of time, I will let you introduce yourself and then the panel.
Thank you so much. I'm Sarah Lineberry. I am an evaluation associate at the Partnership for People with Disabilities. My partner in crime, Angela West, will be here any minute, we hope. The traffic is terrible, so everything that goes wrong, we're gonna blame on Angela. Don't tell her I said that. I won't, I really do not. I promise I won't really do that. We all love Angela. We're very excited to see her. She is on her way. Yeah, so please forgive me, I am also doing double duty now because we're advancing slides and doing introductions, but like I said, I'm Sarah Line. Do you mind working? Absolutely.
Who is that?
This is Dorothy is gonna come up and play assistant for me. There are not very many slides at all, so when we're ready, you just click the down arrow. You know what you have to do.
And just tell me.
I will, thank you so much.
Okay.
Perfect, and so now that I've taken up plenty of your time with that, I'm gonna go ahead and let our lovely panel members introduce themselves. Or if you can go one more slide for me. And our panel members are just gonna tell us all what's their name and where they're coming from today, and I'll pass it on.
Hi, everybody. I'm Shay. I'm an African American female with black hair, with in a wheelchair. I am part of the Ally Alliance, and I reside in Norman, Virginia. Thank you for being here with us today. I'm going to pass it on to my lovely colleague, Stephanie.
Hello, my name is Jesse Monroe. I'm white male in a wheelchair, and I'm also with the Ally Alliance, and I am from Norfolk, Virginia.
Hi, I'm Ben King. I'm from Hanover County, and got to see some of your faces.
Hello, I am Charlotte Waterworth. I am co-chair of the Art Alliance Group, and I am from Fairfax, Virginia.
Oh, Chris, I didn't see you.
Hello, my name is Chris Mitchell. I'm based in Williamsburg, Virginia, representing the Art of Great Williamsburg.
Amazing, thank you all so much.
Is he part of the panel?
Perfect. Ben, you're up. What is the Ally Alliance? Why are you here today?
Now, many of these families, we are from a statewide agency group. These people, for you guys, are from all the state of Virginia. I'm from Hanover, and many of these people represent their own areas.
Amazing. You can go one more slide. And so I'm here today because, like I said, I work for the Partnership for People with Disabilities. And so we do research that supports people with intellectual and developmental disabilities living in the community. And we started working with the Ally Alliance as part of the Cost and Outcomes Project. It's going to sound really boring, and I promise I am not going to take very long to describe it. And then we're going to move right on into why it's not actually boring. The Cost and Outcomes Project takes a whole bunch of really big data and uses it to understand how the funding and the services that people with disabilities are getting are actually having impacts on their lives. And we thought, we're academic researchers, we can only do so much. We better really hear from some people who know what's going on. Who better to tell us what's really going on than members of the Ally Alliance? And so we meet together once a month via Zoom. Angela and I bring questions from our academic researchers. We talk about them. We get incredible insight, and then we come back with other questions from our members of the Ally team with things that they want to hear more about. And so with that, we're gonna move into, I'll give a brief overview of what we're gonna do. We've done our introductions. We're gonna have a few kind of prepared questions that our panel is gonna answer for us. And then we're gonna open it up to questions that y'all might have for us. We'll go ahead and get started. Perfect. And so our first question for the panel, we're gonna start at the very beginning. What is research?
Research, in my opinion, is the act of asking questions, performing experiments in different ways to gain information about different topics, and for us, related to people with disabilities, allies and their families, and just the community at large.
Well, to me, research is about finding out answers on what people need and how they're living and where they are and how all that is interrelated and how find that information out can make changes.
Research to me is one of the big components of the biggest thing that we can do as a community.
You're good. No worries. Here, you wanna come? I don't know where you're gonna go. Go wherever you want. Okay.
I can move that too.
Alright, sorry, Ben. You're doing a great job. What's research?
The biggest thing and research is in the community. The way, how we can transfer that data or take it in Excel spreadsheet and give that way.
So to me, research can be found in various areas. It is not just medical situations, but it can also be found in other areas too. It's definitely in academics. And so in that realm, research always begins with a question. After formulating a question, a hypothesis is developed. Then after that, you need to, I go to places like a library to get primary and secondary sources to include in your articles. And then after that, you create a research project proposal, which I've done many a time in my academic life. And after that, that hypothesis needs to be tested, and it can be tested over and over to evaluate what you're doing until conclusion is made. Hey, you.
Yes.
I was going to.
Angela has a question for me.
Yeah. What is hypothesis?
What is a hypothesis? This is true. Yes, Angela and I got to do a similar presentation to this for a bunch of researchers, and we played a really fun game where we made them list a bunch of fancy research words, and then we made them talk about their projects without using any of their fancy research words, and it was a lot of fun. They had a hard time. So, what is a hypothesis? Does anyone know the answer? Oh, Kim, what's a hypothesis?
A hypothesis is a scientific term to me. A hypothesis
is an educated guess.
Yeah, exactly. Nice. A hypothesis is what we think might happen, but we're not sure it's gonna happen, so we better find out before we make a whole bunch of policy decisions based on what we think might happen. Chris, is there anything you wanna add to what research is?
Well, research is about research is about finding where we want to attend, rapidly, and what you want the future to be.
Nice. And then Mark Dixon is another member of the Alliance who's not able to be here today, but he sent us the answers to his questions, or to these questions. And so Mark says, research is collecting information and studying a group of people about a certain topic. The information can be collected, sorry, I'm reading towards you, so I don't put off the speaker, experimentally through observations, surveys, case studies, or focus groups. And members of the Ally Alliance, like we have here today, have been involved in focus groups and surveys. We volunteer to serve in research studies conducted by many different groups. And so I think that leads us really well into our next question, which someone already started talking about.
Why is research
Why is research important with people with disabilities? Actually, Angela, before we do that, because you weren't here, do you want to take a second to introduce yourself?
I'm sorry.
Angela, come from Virginia Beach, work for the Partnership of People with Disabilities as a community engagement specialist.
Yeah.
Stop apologizing, you're fine. All right, so our next question is, why is research important?
Research is important for me in a number of ways, because the research gives accurate insight into our community, what our needs are, what the impact of what current things are, and can give clues to organizations and just the community and government to talk about what can be done to make things better for our community.
Research is important. Research is important because there are things not going to change for people, especially those with disabilities, without policies, and they're not going to have good policies without good research. And so that's why it's just so important.
And why do you think research is important?
That way can collect data and use it for people with disabilities.
What's data? You don't have it. You can phone a friend then, phone a friend.
There is currently a disconnect between research and people with disabilities. By bridging the gap, the voices of people with disabilities will be amplified and visible. People with disabilities have historically been discriminated against, especially in healthcare, and healthcare research can eliminate barriers in healthcare that people with disabilities are facing. It is my hope that people with disabilities have the opportunity to become researchers, and it helps to increase the visibility of their stories and spread awareness.
Why is research important?
Research is what is important is for disability, for people with disability community to go out in the community and have a better future.
Yeah. Ben gave us another buzzword. Anyone in the audience? What is data? Kim.
Data. Data is information that you collect.
Yeah, data is a super fancy way of saying any information that you collect. It can be a survey, it can be talking to someone, it can be numbers on a spreadsheet. It's just a fancy way of saying information, but we gotta make everything fancy and complicated. And y'all hit on some incredibly important points, that research is important. Because research is how we know what's important to people with disabilities and their families. And knowing what's important and what the issues are helps us come up with answers and better policies that can address those issues in a way that makes sense to the people who are living those experiences.
Research more understandable for everyone.
Isn't it important to make research more understandable for everyone?
Who's that?
Hi, I'm David. You just listen to my voice.
How we are big data. How do we understand that data?
Now that we have all this big fancy data, how do we understand that data?
Because I can charge. I
I look at the chart and I don't understand what it says half the time. Sarah has to help me understand. Sarah, how do people make research more accessible for people with disabilities?
Panel, how do we make research more accessible to people with disabilities?
Okay, I'll take it.
Okay.
This is Shay. I think making research more relatable to real life and studying real issues that we as the Alliance and people with disabilities, make it more relevant to us. For example, get the information from us, from families, depending on what you're studying, because we're going to give you the real deal of what we actually go through as individuals with disabilities and as families do as well. So make it about us. And then, because if you make it about us, people are more likely going to want to be involved in each area of research.
This is Jesse. Another way to make research more accessible is to have different kinds of research, because everyone communicates differently and learns differently. So the more ways you can let people give their thoughts to collect the research is very important.
Then what are some other ways that we can make research more accessible? What passes the phone? You don't have to.
So I would say that in order to make research more accessible, researchers need to look beyond their own lived experiences and acknowledge the lived experiences of people with disabilities. Researchers need to look beyond the disability diagnoses of people with disabilities and see our abilities as we are people with desires, feelings, wants, dreams, etc. And researchers need to presume competence of people with disabilities and not make assumptions and no expectations about us.
Yes, how can we make research more accessible?
Researchers, to make research, need to think on finding programs for the disability community.
Yeah, so like Shay, I don't know what that is either. Ben thinks it's a fire truck. Like Shay was saying, research is more accessible when it's about things that matter in people's daily lives, when it's not so abstract, when we're talking about things that people need, when we're talking about day programs, like Chris said, when we're talking about medical research, like Charlotte has mentioned, when we're talking about things that really matter, and we're talking about ways that they can be applied in people's lives, and talking about it in those specifics, that can make it a lot easier for people to join, and honestly, a lot more interesting for people to join. Like I said recently, it can sound kind of boring, we gotta make it.
So every month, enjoy and say, well, we, use these questions and then we come up with our own feelings. And you and Sarah did pretty good job. I mean, they are the best people to work with. I mean, you guys make
We did put on the comments.
Sarah and I come up with the questions that are pretty hard. What do you do if you don't understand those questions? That's for everyone.
I had one of my previous.
I just ask questions myself, like if there's a word that I don't know, and that's a really important point too. When you're doing research with subjects, be mindful of the fact that big words, people may not understand what that means. So if you relate it to them, for instance, instead of saying data, say information. Most people know what information is. So I think you ask questions if you don't know why they're doing the research, ask questions as to why, because then you'll know kind of what their intent is when they do the research.
Yeah, so if I don't know, understand the question or understand what's going on, I just, I'll ask. And, you really do need to ask, otherwise they don't know that you don't know. And so, and it's okay not to know, so just make sure to, if you don't understand, to, get them to clarify.
Charlotte, what do you do if you don't understand what we're talking about?
Well, I kind of to piggyback off of what Jesse Monroe has said. I always raise my hand and ask for help. And if I still don't know the answer, I ask for and hopefully get accommodations. And accommodations are very important, especially in academics.
Yeah, Chris, what do you do if you don't understand something?
I want to take it over. It's like, to understand, sort things out.
So you take the time to think it over?
Yeah.
I think that's something that Angela and I are really proud of having done with this group, is taking the time. We've been meeting for almost a year and a half. Can you say that? That's wild. I cannot believe it's been that long. But we spent, did we start talking about research right away? We jump in, like, all right, guys, let's go.
We actually got a chance to really get to know each other.
Yeah.
So by the time we really got into the information, we kind of already knew it, like, and we just really took time to really get to know each other. We meet each other so often that we consider each other family at this point, because we work together so closely. But we just took time to get to really know each other and share our experiences with our different disabilities and what we go through.
Someone else want to add anything to getting to know each other? Yeah.
So we've been meeting for a long time, When I first met these two, I didn't know what I was getting into. The first day I hopped on, and I'm like, what do I say? What do I do? How would, and then we started connecting. And then we started talking about what we are talking about now. And it's been completely right for us, and
Pretty good, right?
yeah, pretty good. And it's amazing to be up here before you today and see the work we have been doing.
Well, I like to say that it is very important to connect with your friends and peers. Because that's what we need and want in today's world. And a word that comes to mind to me is solidarity. We must come together in solidarity and work toward coalition building. The more we do that, the more stronger we are together. And the stronger we are together, we can make change. And that's what we need, change. And it reminds me of the movie Clip Camp and Judy Human. Judy Human has always said, and I continue to say, if you don't stand up and speak out for what you want, you are not going to get it. So please help us come together in solidarity and stand with us, be our ally.
Chris, do you want to add anything about how we got to know each other?
To me, I know, we know each other, we all on here Zoom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The blessing and a curse. We can get together from all over the state, which is really cool, but we're on Zoom, which is less
I
cool.
was one in person.
And finally in person, finally in person. All right, I think we're gonna open it up to questions from the audience, unless anyone has final thoughts that you want to share next. One will.
Thank you.
Yeah, Angela.
We don't always have fun.
We don't always talk about disability research. We sometimes talk about what ice cream we like. That's how we can do research. That's very important. To know what ice cream we like.
Jay, was that you who suggested? No, it's Brittany. Brittany suggested that.
And her cat too.
Yeah,
And we end every meeting by saying goodbye to my cat, because we can't say hello to my cat, because if we wake him up in the beginning of the meeting, he will be a nightmare. So we let him sleep, and then at the end of the meeting, we say hello to my cats and goodbye to my cats. All right, so at this point, Dorothy, you can go to the next slide, and then that is our last slide, and so if you would like to, you can sit down. Thank you so much for your help with that. We'll open up to questions from y'all, and it can be for our panel.
I see a hand right now.
Yeah, so it can be for all of us, for a specific person. Angela, oh, Ben, do you want to run the mic?
Yeah.
You got it.
You gotta volunteer.
Teamwork,
I didn't have a question, I have a comment to make, and it's just that I really appreciate BCU and the partnership doing this research and you all for participating in it, because I just had a chance to apply for a grant, and I wanted to be able to provide services for individuals who are on the wait list for Medicaid services before they get their services. And we did not get the funding, it was ARPA. And the majority of the points that were awarded for this grant were the evidence-based research for the programs that we're doing. And I looked everywhere for evidence-based research on home and community-based services, couldn't find any. I found scoping reviews, but that wasn't good enough. So we have people that we could have served, but because we didn't have this kind of research, we didn't get funded. So next time, hopefully your research will allow people who are waiting for Medicaid waiver services to get those services sooner. So thank you very much, appreciate you.
This kind of builds on a little bit what you were saying. So my son has a rare chromosome disorder. We were just with the group that is studying this out of Washington University. The challenge is that they need 200 families to participate in order to be able to get some of this big funding. Now, to get 200 people who are willing to give blood samples, I want to kind of put it to this group, you know, it's tricky sometimes to be a part of research. So, you know, what would you say to peers about why it's important or how to convince them? Because I know some of the other folks, you know, who were there at this event were like, well, you know, I'm 25 and I don't want to do this necessarily. I don't want to push anybody into it, but it's tough. We can't get to that next level without kind of that critical number of people who are willing to do it.
Want to answer that?
Yeah, so what would you tell your peers about participating in research, maybe if they're feeling nervous about it?
Well, before I answer that question, and this is gonna go into my question and answer. I have a degree in social work. So one of the things I've learned in my experience is that you have to, again, and I know I've mentioned it before, make it relatable to them. Don't make it about the medical aspect of course it's important, but some people get really standoffish when you start to talk about research in a medical kind of form. And maybe let them know that their contribution is important, number one, and number two, their contribution is serving everyone. And if they can get this funding for whatever it is, then more people will be helped. And it won't just help families now, it'll help families in the future and the individuals that the research is aimed for.
Anybody else?
Well, I think the rest of our panel will have a chance if they want it. Ben, do you want it? What would you tell a peer who's a little bit nervous about participating in research? You have an answer, you don't think that? You ready? Go for it.
I think I think that let's do the research, get it out of the way.
I'll give you a second. Sorry, what would you tell someone who's maybe nervous? Come back to the same second.
Well, first I would want our peers and friends to talk about what they're feeling. And I empathize with them for the goal of understanding. And then I would validate their concerns. I tell them that they are not alone and that there are places where they can go to find resources. And I mean, getting involved in research, especially healthcare medical research, is something that shouldn't be taken very lightly. Historically, people with disabilities have been discriminated against and have been the subject of many various medical methods by the medicalization of disability and I would like our government and our healthcare system to acknowledge this discrimination as it is wrong. And we ought to be seen as people with desires and feelings and wants and dreams, and not just our disability diagnosis. So please, see us for who we are and our ability, not our disability diagnosis.
Yeah, I think that's something that we have talked about in our group, that we know that people in our group have maybe been in research where they weren't treated super well, where they, even if it wasn't discrimination or an ethical violation, they just didn't feel very good about the research. They felt like they were just a subject, just a number, like they weren't really being listened to, like the research didn't really apply to what they were talking about. And so, like Shay was saying, trying to make it as applicable as possible, which is hard because research takes a really, really long time. So trying to really break it down, this is the goal for this is our goal for today, this is our goal for this project, this is our goal for the year, breaking it down as much as we can, and acknowledging that there's a history that we're that we're working with. Jesse, did you want to?
Yeah. I would just say so that, you know, that to echo what Shay and Charles said, that, you know, only do what research comfortable with, and that without emphasizing it is really important, yeah, to help everyone.
Actually, I have a statement. Maybe there needs to be a research that can be presented where people can do, that would show everybody that a person with a disability is no different than a person without a disability. Because when it comes down to it, everybody needs some kind of help. So if there was a research done where we could show the able-bodied that they're just like a person that they consider disabled, then maybe there wouldn't be so much of the labeling people just so that they can make people be a number.
Yeah.
Something that I'm very proud of at the partnership.
We try to find money to pay people for their time.
Something I'm very proud of at the partnership is we try to find funding to pay people for their time. We acknowledge that they're sharing their life with us. So we want to adequately compensate for what they're giving. From the very beginning, we try to include that in all of the grants.
Anybody else? You have that question?
We can work our way across the room. Is that right? Yeah. Yeah.
I wonder if any or all of you have had any experience in talking to researchers about expanding the ways in which they do their research. Specifically, I'm talking about in the lived experience of my family, and we have lived in many states over the years. My son has often been asked to participate in research, but the only way that he can participate, the only choice offered to give answers are ways that he cannot do. So for example, to fill out a bubble sheet or to fill out, pick the choices of comments and write comments in handwriting on pieces of paper that have to be mailed back. I have actually called myself many of the researchers from these kinds of research and spoken to them directly to explain to them that folks with disabilities are not one size fits all. Everybody's different and everybody brings some really wonderful music to the composition. And so it would be wonderful to hear from everyone, not just people who know how to fill out a bubble sheet. They always agree. They're generally very nice. They sometimes say, sorry, maybe someday we can fix that problem, but that day is not now. But that means there's all kinds of people whose voices never get heard when it comes to research. And so there's a huge void in the responses that the research delivers, because there's whole subsets of people that never get to participate. And I was wondering, with your wonderful advocacy in this area, if you've ever had occasion to speak to researchers to explain that problem to them.
And then Shay and Jesse were actually just part of another research project that uses totally different methods. I just checked with them and they're okay talking about it. So they're gonna tell us a little bit about a way that we've been using methods that are more inclusive for our projects.
So we know this is an ongoing problem, so what you're describing, we've heard many stories related to yours. Recently, I've had the experience to be part of the Healing Narratives Project, where we talked about our medical experiences through, yeah, Dorothy was a part of this too. And where we talked about, for example, I talked about my experience with medical staff when I had my hernia surgery and how they interacted with me, how their mannerisms were they nice, the whole project with that. And we got to really be creative, not only telling our stories through writing and different venues of telling stories, but we also got to express ourselves artistically. So that's just one of the many experiences I've had, but that was a unique experience because not only were we able to share our stories, but we were also able to be creative as well.
Dorothy, you would say a little bit about what you made for that project?
So I'm an artist, so I don't do a lot of writing, I do drawing. So in the healing narratives, it wasn't just about our conditions, but the experience of what happens when we actually go to the doctor. So what I did is I drew two scenes. One scene I drew where what happens when I go to the doctor and my direct support professional is in the same room with me. Now I changed the names, it was really cute, I made it cartoonish. So the patient's name was named Blakey in the cartoon. And I showed the doc asking the direct support professional, the staff, the questions, rather than asking Blakey. And in the second scene, Blakey was dropped off, which means he went into the doctor's office independently. Now, some people can't speak, but everybody has a way of communicating somehow. We just don't realize it. So in this scene, it was about me, so I can speak. So I made Blakey speak. The doc started now talking to Blakey because Blakey's staff was not in there. And in that narrative, what I was showing is that sometimes in healthcare, the healthcare provider overlooks that person with the disability. But guess what? Shay can't tell me how I'm feeling. And Sarah can't tell me how I'm feeling. The only one who can tell me how I'm feeling is me. Now, if I can't talk, if I'm hurting in the stomach, I might rub my stomach. So that's a way of doing research, was we use art. But you can use, and now when you were allowed to use poetry, And I think you were allowed to also use recording if you wasn't able to talk.
Yeah, so for that project, you don't have a project? Give me something. Oh, Jeff. Perfect, Jeff.
So I was also part of the project, what I really loved is really gave the freedom to express, you know, what you're feeling about our jobs, what you want to, because of course I can't really draw or paint or do anything like that, so I wrote sort of like a short story about how upset I was that my different doctors don't really talk to each other, and so that causes a lot of problems with, you know, over medicating and not finding out what really is wrong. So, but so I think this project really is a good example of how you can get research data from a lot of different people by just letting them express what, you know, how they want.
Yeah, so that project was focus groups and then people who had a chance to make whatever kind of art they wanted, go and take photos of something that they at the doctor, that made them think of a doctor, to draw something, to write something, to make something, and then to talk about it in a group with support, as Angela, co-facilitators and support as needed to have those conversations. So those are really. What do we do with us, Sarah?
What did we do with ours, Sarah?
What did we do? What did we do with the art? We had a gallery and we hung it up in the hospital where all of the doctors had to walk by it every day for 3 weeks if they wanted coffee. And we had stories and we had QR codes where we had some of our friends read out the stories that people had written. So people who were walking through could scan the QR codes with their phones and listen to someone reading the stories as well.
So the whole point of that was so people would see it and identify with the stories. Maybe the doctors would take something and implement change in their own practice. Not just the doctors, but all the staff, from the people in the front to the nurses, all the way up to the people in the medical field. That is our hope.
Yeah, and we were there taking it down. One of the pieces had a bunch of butterflies, and we were taking it down last week, and one of the nurses was walking by and said, "Oh, you're taking down my butterflies. I see it every day." Oh, and we had note cards people could fill out and write their responses. Charlotte, do you want to add anything about different ways of doing research that might be more accessible? Oh, it's okay if you don't.
Sure. Well, the one thing that crossed my mind is doing things online, like surveys and stuff.
Or like our Zoom meetings, so
Yeah.
everyone can join.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And of course, I would say that people don't like the constant phone calls and emails. So please be aware of that.
No spam calls, just phone calls. Perfect.
Oh, my mom has a question.
Okay, Charlotte's mom.
I was just wondering, did you get feedback on that project? I think it was a wonderful project, and ideally, it would go from the people at the front desk all the way up. And I know you said you had no parts. Did you get a significant amount, or did you share that this project was here?
Yeah.
What have you observed? If people actually stop?
Like our website, because there's an article about it. But yes, and I think we had about 30 or so tags, which is way more than we expected. And some really profound responses of this reminds me of my sister who passed. This is a really important reminder for me to slow down. Thank you for this. We need to listen to patients. So obviously the people who stopped are the people who are invested, but we absolutely did have people respond, I think more than we expected.
So if anybody would like to see the drawings, I have a copy of, I have pictures of the drawings. The other question we were asked is what we would like to see in healthcare in the future.
Yes. Yeah, we're gonna hit audience questions, but yes, check out our article. What would you like to see in healthcare in the future? Check out Dorothy's drawings. They're fantastic. She's an incredible artist. I think we had more audience questions.
I just had another one in terms of, a lot of times in the past, there's been research done and say maybe it was all men studied and it was extrapolated to like qualify and not be the same for women really. So when it comes to right now with disabilities, is there any mandate to have a certain percentage of people with disabilities participate in some research studies, or what are your thoughts as a group about, how that might happen? I think about all these patient surveys that I get from the hospital after a visit, and to your point, it's not, a bubble form is not gonna be something that I can fill in, but do they mandate and say, well, you've gotta get this many surveys from people with disabilities, otherwise, we're not gonna take into account kind of what you're saying as being very valid. Is there anything to push that?
No. Not that I'm part of it. No. What do y'all have thoughts on? What are ways that we can increase people? Yeah.
So going back to your question, I go online every day and look at different surveys. I'll look at whatever's on there, like what is the budget for this amount of money, Virginia's, Hanover's. I'll look at all different kind of data. I'll look all kinds.
So having things online would be easier for you to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Shayna.
And then I would say there is currently not that system yet, but if you know us already as an alliance, we are pretty powerful in trying to get representation to be part of just daily life and community, and definitely with research, we want to make sure, and this is why our partnership with
The partnership, yeah, it gets
is so important and so impactful. So that is definitely representation and having not only individuals with disabilities, but their families as well. No matter what the disability is, we want to make sure, and this is a pretty powerful partnership that we have to make sure that representation for people with disabilities are represented in a number of areas.
Other thoughts from the panel about increasing?
Well, I think that's what we should do, mandate that a certain amount of the, research is for disabilities, and then that will probably force them to have different ways of finding the creative research.
And from my researcher hat for a second, better identifiers, because sometimes it just says cognitive disability and it's that Alzheimer's or traumatic brain injury or intellectual disability. We don't know, so we can't have the data and the evidence base because we don't know who it's actually talking about. Other questions? Well,
Be quiet,
We're tired. It's the end of the day. We got one.
I was just gonna ask, when will this research be published and available?
Soon. The article about it is available online now on the partnership website, and the journal publication is in progress.
I would like to know if Jesse would explain how, if Jesse would explain how he did his research, because knowing that he said he wrote a story, but knowing that he can't physically write, and I think one person asked him here, how can a person who can't physically write or draw or anything be able to do their story? So would you explain that, Jesse?
That's a good question, Lori.
Back all the way around.
So, yes, I wrote a story, and I do that on my laptop here. I have a voice activating program dragging an active speaking, so I talk into the computer and they dictate what I say. And that's how I can, like, whatever I need to.
Yeah, and so even like really simple things like that with research materials. Kim is excellent about calling out anyone that doesn't have anything that isn't screen reader accessible, as she should be.
Yes, thank you.
It's good, we need it, making sure things are screen reader accessible, making sure that voice to text works, having all of our websites be adapted for people who have low vision and have high contrast, and all of those comparatively simple things that just haven't been done for so long and are excluding people for really silly reasons. Other questions or closing thoughts from our panel? Panel, do you have anything you'd like to say before we end?
Thank you for coming.
Yes, thank you for taking the time to meet with us today. We're so thankful that you guys take the time to come see us, and stay tuned, because this is not an ending story.
And for people who are members of the Ally Alliance, our meetings are open. We meet the first Wednesday of every month, except not September, not August, it's only August. Not August, because that's tomorrow and we need a break, but September 6th, and Sean is fantastic about sending out reminders. And so if people have any interest at all, we would love to see you Wednesday evenings. And we have our lovely panels here who will make sure y'all are caught up and feel comfortable and ready to participate. And so thank you all for coming. And that's a lot.